Welcome to episode 77 of the Clive Barker Podcast. So we had some great news news in this episode, and we also had our main topic, which is Next Testament. Now that all 12 issues, the entire run has come out, we got to sit back and talk about the whole run as a series. So now we start out talking about it in a spoiler-free section, but then, we go into spoilers and we warn you first. So if you haven't read them all, which a lot of people haven't yet because it's just now finished and maybe some people are waiting for a trade paperback. If you haven't read them all, maybe skip over that last part there where we talk about the ending and our thoughts about specific events that happen in the comic and stuff like that. Okay. So welcome. I'm Ryan, and
hi, this is Jose. Welcome to the Clive Barker Podcast.
Yeah, welcome. So we'll jump right into the news. So we have two. Actually, there are three Nightbreed screenings, but we've talked about one of them before. So one just popped up today. Phil and Sarah kind of brought this to our attention. Nightbreed screening, Spectre Fest, October 16th. So that's Elijah Wood's Spectre Vision second LA Horror Festival. And Clive Barker's going to be in attendance.
Yes, because this is in LA and Clive Barker can still do appearances in LA, so
yeah,
he's going to be there. It says here, Elijah Wood, Daniel Noah, and Josh C. Waller's Spectre Vision will host its second annual Spectre Fest, expanding the Neophyte LA Horror Festival's run from 2 weeks in 2013 to 2 months. So that's going to be cool.
Yeah, it was a real surprise because the other screening that they were doing was was a big deal.
Yeah, the one in the special package.
Yeah, so I guess we're going to talk about that one next. So there's another screening that was only for the Clive Barker fans, and if you buy a special box set of the 3-disc Nightbreed, so you get the special edition. Yeah, you get the 3 Blu-ray. You get I think it's in that box, right, that they're selling on their website, and you get a poster, the velvet, hand flocked velvet poster with Clive Barker's ink blot Cabal face on it.
You also get like an autographed Nightbreed poster.
Yes, right, yeah, right. So that's not the same one that he was talking about. Then you get 2 posters.
No, I got the idea that it was 2 posters. Yeah.
So the other one is like the Occupy Midian poster.
I'm not sure. I don't know what kind of poster it's going to be. I remember that when we were told to break the news, it was said there was going to be 1 Nightbreed autograph poster, 1 hand-flocked limited edition velvet poster with the artwork for Cabal made by Clive Barker.
They gave us 1 poster that was really similar to an Occupy Midian poster to use for promotion, and it has the graveyard and the black and red and stuff.
It's an old Cabal Cut poster that was changed. But the thing is, we can also mention this correction. It's not the world premiere screening, okay? Yeah. It's not. That's why it was changed because of legal matters. But it's not the premiere screening because there's going to be 2 screenings before it.
Yeah. The one in Ohio is on the 26th, right?
Yeah, it's going to be EpicCon Ohio Geek Fest. And they're going to... I think they're going to have a panel. They're going to have Shuna Sassy and I think Simon Banford. And did they announce someone else?
I remember reading Ann Bobby's name, but I don't know if that was finalized.
Yeah, it's going to be in August 29 to 31st, I think.
Or October, right?
Absolutely. I misread it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I think that one's actually before the LA special, box set tickets one.
The one at the Alex Theater that's going to be presented by Seraphin and Century Guild.
Yeah.
It's going to be this screening that people can go if they buy.
Mm-hmm.
If you buy the special package at Century Guild, you will get the 3 Blu-ray Deluxe Edition. You will get a signed poster of Nightbreed, and you'll get the hand-flocked Velvet one, plus the two gift tickets to be a part of this screening. So, like I said in the post, I think this is the kind of events that memories are made of.
Yeah.
And that build up memories that you can look at forever. And this is going to be it. I know you're not going to go. I'm thinking about it because I live in California, even though I live in Northern California. I'm thinking about attending this.
How long of a drive is that? I know you were thinking of flying, but I'm just curious.
I think it might be like 6-7 hours.
Oh, okay.
Optimistically.
That's not too bad. I just did that today.
Yeah. But, so yeah, it's going to be in Alex Theater, Glendale.
Cool.
I think it's limited to, well, at least 600 people, considering that they gift you 2 tickets per package. So there are 100 packages. So I guess there's room for at least 600 fans, plus some guests. Clive Barker will be attending. There will be a Q&A afterwards, which sounds pretty amazing. Yeah. And you can get to see the director's cut in fine quality. Trust me, the footage has been found. It's been restored. It's beautiful. You'll watch the movie and with Clive Barker, and then you get to talk to Clive Barker.
Yeah, so they have said because of Clive's health that they're not going to do a book signing. My experience, and I've been to 10 signings where they tell Clive not to sign things, he almost always does it anyway.
Yeah.
So, just in case, it might not be a bad idea to bring a couple of things, just sort of don't expect anything, but...
don't tell him we told you.
yeah, just, be prepared, just in case. Yeah, I mean, I think he breaks down and, he plans to not do that kind of stuff, but he breaks down and just decides he needs to do it anyway.
We were told that the autographed Nightbreed posters for the special package would be picked up at the event, or they can be shipped to you, or they can be shipped.
Yeah, and they're pre-autographed, so he's not signing them. Yeah,
he's not going to be spending time signing them there. So I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a long movie now, so.
Yeah.
But isn't it awesome to be able to see a screening of the director's cut along with the director, and then be able to ask him questions? That sounds like an amazing opportunity to me.
Oh man, yeah, it's a once in a lifetime.
Yeah. So I'm going to do my best to be able to attend, even if I don't know. I mean, the flying thing is pretty expensive, of course, and hotel and all that. But we belong to the Tribes of the Moon, and there's a lot of people out there. I am actually considering the possibility of couch surfing.
Yeah. Well, geez. I mean, I can think of a few people that you might be able to.
Yeah. So I'm actually talking to a few people and seeing what I can come up with.
That'll make a big difference.
Yeah. So let's see. If I'm there, just be sure that we will have an Occupy Midian on location at the screening of the director's cut of Nightbreed, and I will be there to take pictures and record the whole thing, as long as they allow me. But it would have been awesome if you could have gone, and if we could have gone together. I mean, that would have been amazing, because it was really fun meeting you in Vegas, and
it was. Yeah, that was fun.
So that would be awesome to be actually at a Clive Barker event where we could actually geek out together.
Okay, so we have one more piece of news, I think, unless there's anything else that you can think of. But the 3rd volume of Memory, Prophecy, and Fantasy, which is called Masquerades, is out right now. That's by Phil and Sarah Stokes, who are Clive Barker's official curators. They're keeping track of his collection. They run the official website, clivebarker.info. And they're writing very, very meticulous and thorough, basically, encyclopedia of Clive Barker's life.
They're on the 3rd volume, and this one covers 1981 and 1982.
Yeah, this big fat book it's just for those 2 years. So if you're a huge Clive Barker fan, and if you're listening to this, you probably are, definitely pick that up right now. To ship it to the United States, altogether, it's $70, and then in Europe it was less because obviously
48 euros.
Yeah,
and orders in the UK as well for £35. This book includes almost 150 photographs, sketches, and posters, the vast majority of which were never published before, and many of these are in full color. This volume covers stage plays, namely Paradise Street, Frankenstein in Love, and The Secret Life of Cartoons.
Yay!
2 of them are known. The third one, The Secret Life of Cartoons, I don't think it's ever been published anywhere, although there are some libraries out there that have manuscripts of it. And we might be able to do an episode on this one in the future, but no promises for now. And they also talk about unstaged plays, The Autobiography of a Flea, Bad Blood, Love's Body, Men and Women, Jazz, Three Flies Comedy, and others.
Wow, I haven't even heard of those.
Yeah, me neither. And film projects. They talk about The Beardless Vase and other biographies, Cock Robin, Meet Me at the Blue Orchid, and others. We can only assume that these are like those art house movies that Clive Barker did with his dog company friends, like The Forbidden and Salome. I guess I guess that's what it is. And they also talk about written work, poetry, and the Books of Blood, because this is '82. Clive Barker was starting to write his manuscripts for the Books of Blood, as we all know that came out from Sphere Books, I guess.
1985.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's going to talk about his early poetry as well. So you want to get this, Volume 3, Masquerades. You can order it from Clive Barker info/memorybooks.html.
And you can still order the entire set because they have a limited number of the first 2.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what the last time I looked at their website, it said that. Hopefully they still do.
Very low stock of books 1 and 2 is remaining. You should get them as soon as possible if you don't have them, because they're really good. They're really good, and I have read only the first book, and the second one I haven't read yet.
Oh, okay. I've read both of them, but it kind of blurs together as far as what happened in which one.
Yeah, I always wanted to take the time to read those in the perfect mindset, so I like to savor that, and that's why I haven't touched the second book yet. But I'm definitely ordering the third book. I always order 2 sets of these. And one is for me, one is for my brother. And now that the third one has arrived, I guess I'm going to have to get that as a Christmas present.
Does your brother listen to the podcast?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. He's a Clive Barker fan, but he's not like as diehard as I am.
I would think you'd have to be diehard to read those.
I'm pretty sure he hasn't read the first or second volume yet. He just puts them on his shelf.
Okay.
He has a lot of books. He has more books than I do, actually.
Oh, really?
I have quite a lot. Yeah, and I have quite a lot of books. So
okay.
I guess we're both both got the little. Yeah, we got bitten by the little collecting bug. So
okay.
I also have a lot of books that I haven't read yet, but I will eventually. Yeah. I will. When I
have a lot of ebooks that I haven't read. They're so easy to buy, and they're just piled up on the Kindle app and on the Apple Books app, and
sure.
Yeah. So our main topic is Clive Barker's Next Testament. So this is a 12-issue run of comics. It's an original story that was put together by Clive Barker and Mark Millar together. When Clive Barker painted Mark as a model, he painted right on his skin, and the character that they came up with after he painted Mark was Wick, Father of Colors.
I was going to refer people to our interview with Mark Millar.
Oh yeah,
it was episode 61. Yeah. Our interview with Mark Millar of Seraphin, the vice president of Seraphin, because he addresses the story, of course, in his own words, that Clive Barker once painted him. It might have been Zoo Man, the event. I'm not sure. There were some pictures on the internet, but now they're kind of gone. So I was actually curious. If someone out there has a picture of Mark Millar painted as Wick, send it over.
Yeah, for sure. And so they shopped this idea around, like, what can we do with this? And originally they thought it might be a novel that they would co-write together. Mm-hmm. But then they decided instead to do it as a comic book. And I think, thinking about that, it fits well for a comic book, but it may also be for the economy of Clive Barker's time, right? Because co-writing a book is a lot different from the way that he co-writes a comic book.
That's true. I think we also addressed this matter when we talked to Ben Mears once.
Yeah.
And I think we might have asked him in that podcast, and I don't really recall it right now for sure. But I think we asked how much input Clive offered on these books.
Yeah, and I think that may have more been about Hellraiser.
Okay, that was more about
Hellraiser. Yeah. But I think it would be the same principle. Only the difference is this is a whole new property or a whole new world.
Yeah. Back in 2013, Clive announced, we're making something that is a radical rereading of ancient structures. It does have the word Genesis in the title, after all. That should be a dead giveaway. I love the idea of stories being about great beginnings and terrible endings. And the way he was talking about Genesis being in the title was because I have at least, two different covers for number one.
Yeah.
I mean, at least the artwork concept. And one of them says Next Genesis.
And there was also, there were two different versions with Genesis in them, right?
I'm not sure. I know that there was Jack Kirby created for DC the characters of Darkseid and Apocalypse, and on the other side there were the New Gods, I think, and Genesis. Right. This book was supposed to be called New Genesis, the Clive Barker book, but they couldn't do it at the final minute because DC already had a property called New Genesis, which was the planet that belongs to the.
Okay. And I thought they had tried like Next Genesis also, and then they switched it to Next Testament.
Yeah, honestly I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
I should have that in front of me. That's true, but I have a lot of stuff open in my computer now, and
so we know for sure at least that it was at one time going to be called New Genesis, and that didn't work out. So. Yeah. It's written by Mark Miller and Clive Barker, and art by Jaime Yang.
Yeah, it's really nice. The artwork is really beautiful, and the color is amazing. I mean, the way they use color in this comic book is really something else.
Yeah. And I went through and I reread this entire run of comics over the last couple of days just to get it all fresh in my mind, because it's been more than a year because there have been months where issues didn't get published. So even though there's 12 issues, it's been longer than a year that this comic's been out.
Yeah.
So I wanted to read them all in a row and get them all kind of fresh in my mind.
It's a story that doesn't really stop for long. So it's kind of a story that from number 1 to number 12, it takes place over a certain amount of days, but very few days.
Yeah, it's like a week maybe.
The story just keeps going.
Yeah.
So it's a good idea to actually read it in one sitting if you can do it.
Yeah, definitely. And I did notice a lot of little hints of things that I never noticed on the first read through.
Yeah.
Like the pyramid tomb that Wick is imprisoned in has the faces of his two brothers on two of the sides.
Oh, okay. Well, do you want to put do you want to create like a spoiler warning that we can put on before we start?
Well, I don't want to. I don't want to spoil this because it's so new. But I think that's okay to mention, just because he mentions right in the very beginning that he was banished by his brothers.
That's true. That's true. So we can give our general impressions and talk about some of the things about the book. But for spoilers, I would suggest that we say it afterwards.
Okay, reserve a section at the end of the podcast for spoilers. Okay. All right. Yeah. So it starts out with Julian, seems like a kind of a crazy old man who's been having dreams that lead him into the desert.
Yeah, it's interesting. The desert part, we see this man running through the desert.
With a blindfold on.
Yeah, with a blindfold on. He had a dream that he had to go into the desert, and the only way he was going to find what he was looking for was when he wouldn't be looking for it at all.
Yeah.
So he just decided to run in the middle of the desert, and he trips on something on the floor, and he finds, like you said, a pyramid.
Yeah. So he dug up the entire pyramid, smashed it open, and released Wick.
The Father of Colors.
Yeah.
A beautiful character, very Clive Barker. I mean,
yeah.
This is something that could come out of the Imagica, for all.
Yeah, and I think where Wick differs from, Clive Barker character is just the way he acts. I mean, this is definitely kind of an amalgam of Mark Miller and Clive Barker sort of sensibilities. That, Mark is more like apocalypse and horrible things happening, and Clive is more revelation and transformation. And
Mark Miller has that Clive Barker presents the sickness, which is about zombies and decay and like this zombie woman that the trailer that he did a Kickstarter for. So yeah, I see what you mean. Clive Barker is more about dramatic changes that offer revelation.
Yeah.
And in this case, the revelation just turns out to be the apocalypse. So like you said, it's a mix of like Clive Barker and Mark Miller sensibilities.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of Jungian sensibility in the way that Clive Barker does things. In part of this comic, there's the Wick is telling people, by the way, there's no heaven. It's kind of like you're just piles of meat that I created. It seems like the magic is taken away from people.
And in this comic book, we're led to believe that this Wick, Father of Colors, that he was God the Father. What they mean by that, I guess, is that he was the creator of the universe, because this was supposed to be called New Genesis as well, so this was supposed to be the God of Genesis. At least until the time of the binding of Isaac. That's when he was... Well, this is all in the first issue, so we're not really spoiling anything so far.
Yeah, because he read as soon as he gets out, the first thing he does is read the Old and New Testament and talk to Julian about them. Say, these are the things that are right, these are the things that are wrong.
Right.
When they're talking about the devil, they're probably also talking about me.
Yeah, well... that comes later in the story. But Mark Miller said to USAtoday.com that the basic concept is, what if God were to come back and tell you how we all got it wrong and what everything really meant? Yeah. And I think that might have been the intention at the beginning, but I don't think it turned out to be that way in the comic book by issue 12.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, other than explaining who he is and he's...
Yeah, basically... This is a very chaotic God. I find it hard to believe that he would be able to be a creator, like the creator of the universe.
Well, he's the God of the Old Testament, right? And the God of the Old Testament doesn't make a lot of sense.
The Old Testament just to the part where the binding of Isaac, because that's when he was imprisoned by his two brethren that he claims existed. Up to the binding of Isaac is basically just the 2050 BC.
Yeah.
That's like the hypothetical timeline for the binding of Isaac.
But I mean, you look at stuff like what he did to Job or the Passover, horrible things.
Job was real, so
yeah. Well, I mean, and I'm just talking about God in the Old Testament was horrible.
There's parts in this where they contradict himself a little bit. He's also a God of contradictions. This one, Wick.
Well, and he's so obsessed with people acknowledging and worshiping him and not forgetting about him.
He's a very paranoid God.
yeah, for sure.
He's a very weird God.
Yeah, and he wants him to. He's like, make me a pyramid. This is taking too long, and it's only been like half an hour.
We're kind of getting into spoiler territory.
Yeah.
Here's another quote from Mark Miller about how this all began. He says, "I was fresh off my stint as the writer for Hellraiser and Clive, and I work incredibly well together. So we were looking for that next big project, what it would be. We'd actually been kicking around ideas for New Genesis for quite some time, and it was the right thing at exactly the right time. Mm-hmm. I was a free agent, Boom was asking Clive for original content, and the stars aligned. This is something that Clive and I sort of came up with together. I volunteered to be a living canvas for Clive, and when he was finishing painting me, what we had was Wick, the primary antagonist of New Genesis. So he's entirely Clive's creation, but from that moment on, both Clive and I were obsessed with finding out who this character was and what his intentions were. Through tossing ideas back and forth, we came up with a brutal story that really stuck with both of us. And as it turns out, Wick's intentions are less than benevolent. Any more, and I risk saying too much, so you'll have to read it if you want to find out the rest." Mm-hmm. He said this one to fearnet.com on March 13. This God, he claims to be omnipotent, okay? He claims to be the God the Father and the God who created the universe. But he managed to be imprisoned by his two other brethren. This kind of foreshadowed a little bit a part of the story and how I imagined the story was going to end when I was reading issue number 1 and 2.
Yeah. Well, and when we get to the spoiler section, I want to talk about the ending more, because there's some stuff I wanted to say about it, too.
Uh-huh. Julian Demond, the man who did the expedition to find this pyramid. What did you think of him? I thought he was a very, how should I say, he was a pretty empty character. And a little bit after the midpoint.
That's what I was going to say. I think that he it was hard to see the point of him, except that he's kind of like the guy in Rawhead Rex that hit the thing with his shovel or whatever, you know. But later on he starts to, really flesh out his character, and there's a scene in particular that I didn't understand at first, and then reading it again, it's like, oh yeah, he's actually kind of more of a complex character, and he's got real feelings.
He's like a guy who begins the story entranced by the idea of God, and then he ends completely disappointed in God. So
yeah, and he hates the world, and he doesn't like it any better now that God is here.
I guess he thought that he was kind of like Frank. He thought when the Cenobites would come, that there would be a carpet of virgins at his feet.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of foreshadowing in the first couple of episodes, especially the first one. Yeah. And there's also like this kind of bond between Tristan, Julian Demond's son, whose fiancée Elspeth is a lovely blonde girl. Yeah. And they're at this party somewhere, and as soon as his father unleashes Wick, he gets like this feeling. It's like a spider sense is tingling. He just gets this clairvoyant feeling that his father is in danger and he has to leave the party with his fiancée. And they rush to his house, and Julian and Tristan have a very strange relationship. They don't come off as father and son.
No, in fact, he calls him by his name. He doesn't call him dad or father. He calls him Julian.
Yeah, and by issue 2 or something, he tells his own dad, Julian, go fuck yourself. Yeah. Which I thought was kind of like a little way out there, a little too far.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's kind of like that with everybody.
Yeah, and then I realized, you know what, Tristan is Julian's son. Maybe some of Julian's, abrasiveness kind of rubbed off on his son, because there's moments in the comic book where even though Tristan and Elspeth, they're supposed to be like the human element that you can relate to in the story. But Tristan has these weird moments when he comes across as a little paternal, a little dismissive of what's going on.
Yeah, he gets depressed, right? And he sort of shuts down and wants to give up sometimes.
And then he just gets in a rage and he pushes on again. It's strange. It's a strange character as well.
Yeah.
Elspeth is the only one that I thought was really more human.
Yeah.
In the middle of all this, she was the more genuine character in the middle of all this to me.
Yeah. And I think that there was a good even-handed way that they treated Tristan and Elspeth as equals, for comic books, because when they get into violent situations, because they get kidnapped twice, and they get into violent situations, and Tristan and Elspeth are basically equally able to be violent and do what they need to do to protect themselves.
In fact, Elspeth saves Tristan more than once in the book.
Yeah. So I really appreciate that, and maybe it's just that I haven't read new comics in a long time.
Although in one moment, Tristan is in a motel and Elspeth is watching the news, and he paternally turns to her and kisses her forehead and said, "Honey, what have I told you about watching the news? It rots your brain." I think they're playing it a little sarcastically at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's a character quirk, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, he's still a very rich, privileged kid. He's supposed to play kind of a rich, privileged kid.
Yeah. Maybe that's true. I mean, I'm sure that would annoy her.
Yeah, and he uses his credit card, his dad's credit card, as if it was. After fighting the apocalypse, I've earned to use my dad's car to buy myself a car to escape the apocalypse.
And chicken and waffles.
And chicken and waffles.
Yeah.
So yeah, the first issue that was a doozy. That really gets the gears going. There was a beautiful limited edition variant cover by Clive Barker for number 1, and I think also for the last one, right?
Yes, yeah. And thanks again to Boom for sending that to me, because it's awesome.
Oh, cool. I've only seen the artwork online. So the first issue is called A Single Dream Can Spark a Revolution, and opens up with this quote that says, if God really existed, it would be necessary to abolish him, which is a quote from the Russian poet Bakunin, I think. They never tell us where Julian Demond goes on his expedition to find the pyramid. It just says location unknown.
Yeah, but he hired a bunch of people to help him dig, and then I guess, did they help him dig, or did he dig it all up himself?
That's another thing. He's like this old, obese man, but somehow in his religious fervor, he manages to dig up the whole pyramid by himself.
Yeah. Of course, he does come back, and there's all these employees, and he's like, I don't need you guys anymore. So it is possible that he had them dig it all up, and then he sent him away.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't get that vibe from it at all. I get the vibe that he just ran in the desert, discovered the pyramid, and then became so frantic about it that he just dug the whole thing up and crashed it. But what I was going to say about the location unknown is that I would like to believe in my grand unified theory of Clive Barker.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
That he's running through the empty quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes it more awesome if they had picked empty quarter. I also spotted kind of a reference. I don't know if this is a reference, but in one of the issues, one of the characters' names is called Sam Calhoun.
Oh.
And what I thought about immediately was Calhoun Mooney from Weave World.
Yeah.
I have no idea if it's supposed to be a reference, but...
So was the creature in Sacrament, was it from the empty quarter?
The Nilotic?
Yes. Was it from the empty quarter?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, maybe it's been a long time since I've...
There was Domus Mundi, which was like...
Yeah, the Dome of the World.
I know what you're talking about. Rosa and...
Rosa McGee and Jacob Steep?
Jacob Steep, yeah. They formed the Nilotic.
Right, and they had forgotten that they were one person. But
that's a good question, but I don't remember if he mentions that he was from the Empty Quarter. I always just related Empty Quarter to Weave World and the angel of,
Well, and the Empty Quarter is also in that video game.
Yeah, Jericho.
Jericho.
That's true. That's true. That's a good reference. So I wish that they had said that this was the Empty Quarter on Next Testament. That would have been an awesome grand unified theory.
Yeah, for sure. Of course, in this grand unified theory, they just okay, that's a spoiler. I'm not. Let's back that up again. Okay.
So, one of the funny things also in issue number 1 is that when Wick is released and he talks to Julian Demond, he says, "Hey, where am I? How did you release me? Hey, you're speaking English."
I invented.
That's another one of my inventions, English, and I'm like, what? And that's why sometimes I think. Can we really take seriously what Wick is saying? Is he really being genuine? Because at one point in this story, someone actually asks him, "Do you lie?"
Yeah, and he says, like, if this were a game, you'd be winning. But he never actually answers the question.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
But anyway, very, very beautiful artwork during the release of Wick.
Yeah.
He emerges like a holographic Silver Surfer. And Julian Demond kneels while he says "My God" in front of him, which is kind of both an interjection of amazement and also very symbolic that he found his God. Did you understand what happens when Wick returns to the camp with Julian?
Yeah.
Let's see your wife because I need the offering. And what he does when he goes into the tent and his wife is a pill-popping trophy wife, I guess. I got the feeling that she was not Tristan's mother.
Right.
That she was like a trophy wife that Julian had.
Yeah, I think that Julian had said his mother died. I think so.
But anyway, Wick touches Vera, that's her name, and we see kind of like this kind of transfer appear. It's kind of weird. It's like this smoke or something exchanging between them, and he says something about being too long since I received the sacrament.
Yeah. So I guess he's, sucking up her essence or...
Yeah, but that's the only time he actually does that, so I didn't really understand what that was supposed to mean, if anything.
Yeah.
He just turned the woman into a catatonic,
Did he? I thought he killed her.
No. Just a couple of pages after that, you see him ushering his wife into the helicopter along with Wick when he's returning to civilization, and she actually appears during the banquet scene later on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Another foreshadowing moment here is when Tristan and Elspeth are on Julian's library in his huge mansion, which apparently his own son would be off limits because the butler tries his best not to let Julian's son enter the estate. Which was
Butler Warren, he's so ineffectual.
I know.
It's actually kind of funny. It's like, stop, no, you can't go in there. And they're like, shut up.
And then Wick, like you said, his first major act, I would say, in the first issue is that he slaughters the entire camp for no reason.
Yeah, he lifts them all up in the air and dumps them. And I think he was doing it for Julian, right? Because Julian was saying, okay, I'm all done with you guys. You're fired. He's like, what? Now you don't understand English? And Wick is like, oh, let me help.
Yeah, that's kind of overkill. That's the first issue, and that's an excellent opening.
Yeah. And at this point, you're thinking, did Julian make the right decision? Because this guy seems like
gonna go south really fast.
Yeah.
I was like, well, let's see what's gonna happen. It's in some ways a very straightforward story, but in other ways it's very complicated. I had some difficulty understanding when things were happening in some parts, because some scenes are intercut with other scenes, because this is basically divided into two visions. It's Julian and Wick traveling and, going around the world.
Doing their thing, yeah. And then Elspeth and Tristan.
Because on the first issue, their mission becomes to locate the oldest library in America, which was also a church.
Yeah.
And they have to, they're going to try to locate this, I don't know, this book, I guess. They only have the clue about this library being a place where something important is stored.
Right. So they could learn, they want to learn something about Wick.
They find a triple Ouroboros, which is a snake biting its own tail. That symbol keeps appearing, which kind of reminds me a little bit the way they go through Julian's library and they discovered these weird scrawls and these weird messages, things that said something like, I need to do a leap of faith, I want to leave a scar in the world, and stuff like that. Triple Ouroboros, which is like a triple ring.
Yeah.
It refers to a trinity. And I thought that this moment when they discover all this stuff and they're trying to make sense of it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Jaffe and the Dead letter off.
Yeah, for sure.
These messages and this symbol that keeps appearing of the shoal.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was interesting, and I decided to mention this parallel in my mind.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's a good point. So then their search leads them to the library, and getting to the library is much more difficult than they had thought.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And
yeah, that's true. I'm going to say, first of all, I'm just going to say that I do recommend this, and go through it in one sitting if you can. I think this would make an interesting movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been, I was just trying to imagine all the special effects that they would do with Wick.
So now that you've recommended it and I recommend it too, can we go into spoiler time?
Yeah, let's go into spoilers. So if you don't want to know what happens in the story, if you don't want the story to be spoiled, or for some people just knowing the first issue would be a big spoiler.
Or if you don't mind spoilers.
Or if you don't mind spoilers, or if you read it and you wanna see if we picked up on some ideas that you got while you were reading it, I guess this is the spoiler part.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's see, where do we start? I found, because you and I had been talking as we've been reading these about the character of Julian. And what I thought was really interesting is that Julian is kind of like the apostles of Jesus, right? Like he's so devoted and he's to Wick. And when somebody else comes along, this redheaded woman, and I cannot remember her name, he's jealous of her, right? Kind of like the apostles of Mary Magdalene. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that, although Julian does much less than the apostles ever did in the gospel.
Right, no, he doesn't do a whole lot except for whatever Wick tells him to do.
Yeah, after the midpoint, that's when he kind of has a stirring and he decides to start being more active. But until like the first 6 issues, I guess, he's just there next to Wick and he's trying to show him the world.
And this redheaded lady is like a real smartass, and Wick thinks that's cool. I mean, other people that smart off to him, he murders, but this lady he thinks is cool, and Julian doesn't like her. But after a while, she says something that bothers Wick, and he just like snaps his fingers and she disintegrates.
Yeah.
And that
Wick has absolutely no problem in killing anybody.
Yeah,
I mean,
and that was a turning point for Julian, right? At that point,
yeah,
he said, that's it, I've had enough.
Sure.
I mean, and Wick is like, what? I thought you didn't like her. And he's like, well, I thought you did like her. And in his mind, it's like, we're all disposable, right? So
the straw that breaks the camel's back,
right,
because
like,
to that point, Julian has seen Wick kill 4 million people in Hollywood in the blink of an eye, and he doesn't even blink. I mean, he's just like, oh, okay, where do you want to go next? Every single of these comic books opens up with some quotes, and it starts you off easy, and then it starts getting more and more iconoclast as it progresses, until you get like this quote from Richard Dawkins that is telling how God is, the Bible has pedophilia in there, and God is a mass murderer.
Oh,
and
yeah,
this
talking about the Old Testament God and how horrible he is. Yeah.
And how he's horrible and all that. And sometimes it seems like Wick is actually answering to the quote box. There's a one that you were talking about, that girl that's later in the story, but there was, God is a child who amuses himself, going from laughing to crying for no reason, each day reinventing the world to the chagrin of hair splitters, pedants, and preachers who try to teach their God his job as creator, I guess. And this is from Ellie Four. She was an art historian, and she wrote a book called L'Esprit des Formes in 1927. So that's where this quote was taken from. They don't give you the actual book, but I looked it up.
Okay.
And this is pretty much on the nose when it comes to Wick. He's a very childish God. That's why I don't believe that this God could be the God of Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like you said, at one point, and there's kind of a bookend factor to this, like he comes out of a pyramid, and when he actually finds a mob of people to worship him, he asks them to build him a pyramid.
Yeah.
They try to do it for like 5 hours, I think. And then he just completely snaps and says, no, you sicken me. You guys sicken me. I want you guys all out of here. You can't even build a freaking pyramid. And I'm like, dude, just chill. It was like 5 hours. You have to give it time.
Yeah.
They're trying their best. People are pushing ropes and giant blocks of rock. And he's completely snapping because he thinks they're not doing it quick enough.
It's kind of like a kid at Christmas, right? And he's got all these different toys, and he doesn't know what to play with first, and you get sort of paralyzed by indecision. Yeah.
Going back to the second episode, Wick tells Julian the Mon that the Bible should come with a disclaimer that they took liberties with artistic license. Okay, so he says, well, I'm really not the father. I'm more of a rogue, Although Job, the book of Job is true, and the flood was true too.
And he says, but not for the reasons that you think it was.
Yeah, he just wanted to see how it would look like.
Yeah.
And as for Sodom and Gomorrah, he didn't look down on them. He actually got down with them, And he says, well, that just got out of hand. So that's his explanation for Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
And then he claims that he never turned Lot's wife into a statue of salt.
Yeah. So what happened with Sodom and Gomorrah is his brothers came, right, and started a fight with him, and their fight wrecked Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, I guess that was it. Basically, that's it. But I got the idea that even Wick and his two brothers, they did not comprise the total of the deities in the universe. Didn't you get that vibe?
Yeah. I mean, they were really mysterious.
Yeah, Wick sometimes talks to someone even before his brothers arrive.
Yeah.
He talks to the sky like...
Yeah. It's like, is there a god above them?
Yeah, that's a good point there. I mean, he talked about his brethren, so who created them?
Yeah, it's almost like they're children. Yeah, and in fact, the Red, I can't remember their names. Do you remember their names?
Yeah, they're the Holy Spirit and Jesus.
Well, I mean, they had real names that they called Filt and Unan. So Filt, Unan, and Wick.
Yes.
And so if Filt is the red guy with the horns, he never speaks. He doesn't ever say anything.
I think he says something just at the end of the story.
Oh, I thought it was the gray one that said that.
Yeah, it might be the Jesus one. That's true. It's a gray one. So, Phil to Noonan. Those are Wick's brethren.
Yeah. So
yeah, he says basically what happened was why God disappeared from the world is because after they put him into a pyramid, after they put him in the void, so to speak, after he told Abraham to kill his son Isaac, because he was jealous. But then his brethren intervened, and they told Abraham not to kill his son. That was not Wick. And that's when they defeated him and put him in the void in the pyramid.
Yeah.
So everything that happened after that, Wick had nothing to do with it. If you had a chance to meet God, what would you do with him? Where would you take him? That's a question that it's interesting to reply. Because what Julian does here is something that it seems like something a rich white guy would do.
Oh,
honestly.
you mean take him to Hollywood?
Yeah, or make a dinner party for him and Wick puts on a suit.
Oh, and show him off to all of his stupid phony friends?
The liberators of this world, that's what Wick calls them. And then who are they? They're like this guy who sells airspace for ads on TV. They're this internet tycoon who's a pornographer. Yeah. And this old lady that has like a trophy, pool boy. Yeah. And it's like, are these the finest people that Julian Demond found to introduce to Wick?
You would think he would want like philosophers or maybe some people high up in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, something like that, like bishop or something. There wasn't even a bishop in his dinner party or anything. But that's the other thing. Like, Tristan is an atheist, and he claims that his dad never had an interest in religion.
Yeah. Well, I think it was the opposite. He hated religion, right? So his interest was that he hated it.
We never really get the explanation of what possessed him in the first place to finance an expedition to find God.
Yeah, it was some kind of dreams that Wick must have sent him.
And he does foreshadow that he might return at the end of the story as well. Where in one issue, Wick asks this question like, hey, so tell me, if there was a place that you guys wanted to make disappear, what would that be?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And this junkie or wino that's like groveling on the floor next to Wick said like, kill all the assholes, man. Kill the Midwest. And it's like, done. Yeah. How does he even know what the Midwest is, where it begins and ends? Why would he take his, advice when he just told a woman to shut up because she asked a stupid question? I mean, how is that not... He's a very whimsical guy.
Yeah, he is. He's unpredictable.
He's completely unpredictable.
Well, and he knows everything anybody's thinking or saying by looking at him from their body language.
But then some things that are completely obvious, he has no idea. He's very naive regarding certain things.
Yeah.
So that's really strange. And one of the things, for example, I was dreading that this comic book was going to take place only in America, even though it's supposed to be something that is affecting the whole world.
Right.
Okay, all the planes at one point, all the planes fall out of the sky. And at another point, he destroys all communications in planet Earth. Like, no phones are working, TVs aren't working anymore. So, because he wanted to bring back the old madness. Because when he was God, there were only like 200 million people in the world, and they were all isolated. There was no internet or telephones. Mm-hmm. And nowadays, they could talk to their loved ones at any time. Yeah. So, even if they're far away, it's a kind of solace when you're far away from someone that you can talk to them. But he takes that away because he doesn't want people to communicate with each other. And then you don't really understand what his plan is because he keeps saying that he wants to liberate people. So, people, I'm releasing you. You should be free. But it's like, you're not keeping them free. You're making them prisoners of fear because you're killing them.
Yeah.
And you're doing things that make no sense. That's I guess the nature of this God Wick. Yeah. He's very Joker-like in his issue number 2, I think. Or is it number 1? I think it's actually the end of number 1 when Julian throws that dinner party for him full of like rich people.
Oh yeah.
It reminded me of the Joker when he crashes like Bruce Wayne's banquet and he starts asking people, "You want to know how I got these cars?" Yeah. And I was like, this is kind of like the Joker, but what if God was the Joker?
Yeah. Yeah, and that guy's like, "Oh, if you're God, then show us some miracles," and he makes that old lady's head explode.
Yeah, it's like, there you go.
There's your miracle. And then everybody just gets up and runs and screams, and they trample each other and kill each other. And
yeah, a few weird moments. There's a few I wouldn't call them bad choices, but I would definitely call them strange choices. Like, how do Tristan and Elspeth escape the banquet massacre? Well, they hide under the table in the dining room. Just out of random chance, there's a trap door.
No, I don't think it's random. I think Tristan knew that trap door was there. I think there was some mention of that. That was the whole reason he told her to get under the table. But he's also got that secret room behind the library when you pull Paradise Lost off the shelf.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, maybe he likes to have these little nooks and secret places around the house. I mean, Julian was a man who probably wanted to have secret passages in his house. I mean, he was rich, eccentric. He could very well do that.
That would be tough to get out of that. I mean, because they're there and he's killing everybody. I mean, it would be tough to figure out a way to get them out of that situation.
Yeah. The other thing I said that I had some difficult time understanding when things were happening in relation to each other between the two storylines is because at one point we are still seeing Wick talking to Julian after he killed all his friends. He completely, exploded everybody around. And they're sitting in the middle of corpses and he's like, well, this is your only chance to walk away, Julian. You're thinking there's still time to end this, and you do still have your free will, so I will allow this once. You can just walk away. And he doesn't. He stays with Wick. Okay. At this point, you can say, well, he's God, and even though he killed his friends, I mean, you can still give it a chance, see where this goes. Yeah. It's like, I'm friends with a God.
Well, exactly. It was like, it made him feel powerful, and it's also, if you're not with him, you're against him, right?
Yeah. Wick is telling him this elaborate speech about will and, that the only thing separating you from freedom is a whisper. Choice, Julian, is everything. And while he's talking to Wick, Tristan and Elspeth are escaping the house. And they get into a car, and they drive to the airport, and they go through the check-in, and they're putting their seatbelts on the plane, and then they cut back to Wick and Julian, and they're coming out of the house and getting into the car. And I'm just like, I'm trying to understand when things are happening in relation to each other.
Kind of like how Beast can fall through a skylight and say like a whole chapter of Shakespeare.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of the nature of comic books, but I thought that part, like, and also on the way to the airport, Elspeth calls the police to tell them that there was a huge massacre in the mansion. Yeah. This is between their traveling to the airport and getting on the plane and buckling up. And when Julian and Wick come out of the house, the cops are there waiting for them.
Right.
And Wick says something like, oh, I know what those are. They're called guns. And bullets, of course, are going to do nothing, and he just kills the cops. Yeah. What Wick does is gets in a car with Julian and drives. I don't know where they're driving, to be honest. He says, well, let's go. And they drive away. And all of a sudden, Wick tells Julian, stop the car. And it's like, what? He's like, stop the car. And he stops the car. And all of a sudden, this huge jumbo jet appears in front of them, appears to be colliding with the car, and then it just explodes before it touches the car.
Yeah.
And that's when we see Tristan and Elspeth also tumbling to their doom in a plane. I'm just finding a hard time connecting all these things happening together, because it seems like the Wick and Julian segment takes much less time than the story with Tristan and Elspeth.
Well, you're right. I mean, Tristan and Elspeth should have taken a couple of hours to get on an airplane.
Yeah.
But the police would have been there in like 10 minutes.
So I'm just like, this happens again a couple of times during the series. Like there's the moment where the Midwest is destroyed. Just on that issue, Tristan and Elspeth were in Arkansas. And then all of a sudden, that happens. The Midwest is destroyed. We cut to the next issue, and Wick is still picking up on the same conversation that he was doing the issue before. But in the meantime, they cut to Tristan and Elspeth, and they're already out of Missouri and into Illinois, and they're driving for 5 hours. So it's like, it's kind of weird to understand what those things are in relation to each other.
Yeah.
It's not really a complaint. Yeah. I completely understand that sometimes they're just showing us the important moments of each storyline.
Right, they don't always have to sync up right with each other exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So when Julian is supposed to take Wick to this like beautiful, wonderful town where he could meet all sorts of, important people, he takes him to Hollywood. And then when he gets there, this is Hollywood. It's really more of a tourist trap. And I'm like, then why did you bring him there?
Yeah. And it's like Hollywood's not really a place. It's more of like a feeling or, yeah.
Why don't you take him to the freaking Vatican or something, and Rome? Have him introduced to the Pope or something.
Go to Rome.
And then he says, "Oh no, I want to be in somewhere exciting. I want to go." After he destroys Hollywood, of course, because he kills 4 million people like that, and he goes like, "Well, just 6.5 billion people more to go." And then he goes and he asks Julian, this is not the place I asked you to. Take me to some other place more interesting and exciting. And he takes him to San Francisco. You're still in California. Couldn't you have gone a little further to somewhere more exotic?
Yeah. And he really likes that people are heroin addicts.
Yeah. He should have, Julian should have taken him to the Castro in San Francisco, because that place is beautiful. I've been to the Castro, and I've been to the Castro Theater. That's a place where you want to take Wick.
Yeah. It would be tough, though. I mean, how do you please him?
Well, you can't. That's the point.
Yeah.
Tristan and Elspeth, we saw them falling on a plane, okay?
And only they and the pilot survived.
Yeah. One of the pilots. The other pilot died.
Well, I think only they and the pilot. There may have been others. They didn't really stick around that long to find out.
We do see them, go on an ambulance and stuff, which is another one of those moments where this should take longer than what's happening on the other story.
Well, and going back to what you were saying, too, about things syncing up or the timeline of things, there was a moment when Julian had said something about how they'd gone to all these different places, and it wasn't shown. So a bunch of time had gone by, and they'd gone to some other places and presumably killed everybody in these other places, too.
All right. Another one of those callous moments where Tristan kind of channels his own father is when they're staying at a diner after they left the hotel, and everybody's listening to the news about how hundreds of thousands of people have died all over the world. All the planes in the world crashed. One of the things he asks the maid is, any chance we can get a reprieve? And she's like, huh? It's like, the television. It's depressing. Can we listen to something else? And hundreds of thousands died. I would probably want to know more about what happened. I mean, I was stuck to the TV when 9/11 hit.
Or the Space Shuttle Challenger. That's true. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, maybe you would even think that, but you wouldn't say it out loud. Yeah. But I don't know. Yeah, maybe he might have a little bit of a, he's also, he argues with everybody that talks about the Bible or God. Yeah,
even when his life is on the line.
Yeah.
He can't hold himself. He has to say something, which I thought there's definitely a very iconoclastic, very blasphemous.
God isn't who you think he is. I mean, and he's absolutely right, but you don't have to have a debate with these hicks.
Right. Because there's a point when Wick is going to San Francisco, Tristan and Elspeth are driving to find that library. They want to go to the library that was built in 1644, and the library was called the Preston Library. I haven't checked to see if this actually is a place.
No.
Did you? Right. But anyway, one of the funny things, funny religious jokes that Wick does when they reach San Francisco is he says this cryptic thing that I guess some people might not have picked up. But he tells Julian, hey, this San Francisco is like, really? And he makes a joke about the spirit of Francesco and Sister Moon garbage. He's like, I hope this isn't about the spirit of Francesco and the Sister Moon garbage. He is actually referring to St. Francis of Assisi. St. Francis of Assisi, which was called Francesco, of course, he did a canticle to the sun, I think. And that's where he talks about the brother sun and sister moon and stuff like that. So, again, something that it's kind of hard to know where Wick picked it up, because this is obviously ages. He was entombed ages before this. But it seems like he picks up this knowledge out of the ether. I don't know. He didn't have time to read any books, and I haven't seen him pick up any other book except the Bible throughout this comic book series. So sometimes it's weird that he knows about these things. Like at one point they visit Rome, the Colosseum, and he goes, the Colosseum. Now this was a great place. This was where humanity learned its lessons. And I'm like, dude, the Colosseum was built like on 70 AD or something. And you were entombed back in 2050 BC. So how do you even know about the Colosseum? Maybe he picked it up while he was entombed? I don't know.
Well, he does, yeah. I mean, he is able to influence people's dreams.
Sure. So maybe to some extent he picks up things from the world and he knows these things. Again, it's weird. It's strange. Because he didn't know about the New Testament when he was released.
Well, he can fly and he can teleport, but sometimes he makes Julian drive him around.
He's very amazed that humans have managed to master flight when he gets on planes and stuff. And when he brings down the planes, he always does some snide remark like, I still can't believe you guys have figured out how to fly. So there's things about the world he doesn't know, and then there's things that he knows, and we don't understand how he knows.
Yeah, and there are some, I mean, flight he's impressed with, but it's like everything else he thinks that the human race hasn't really advanced very far.
Well, he likes heroin.
True. He likes heroin and airplanes.
Yeah, because there's this scene in San Francisco, I think, when the first thing he sees after he asks Julian to take him to an exciting place, he takes him to San Francisco, and the first thing he sees is a heroin junkie on the streets, which Wick proceeds to go over and lick the inside of his elbow. He licks the spot where the junkie shoots himself with heroin, and is like, I like this heroin. This is good stuff. Yeah. It's a form of opium. This god is a very chaotic god. Again, it's like he claims that it was ridiculous and he never turned Lot's wife into a pile of salt. But then at one point, there was one woman who, accuses him of blasphemy, and he points at her and turns her into a pile of salt. And he goes like, haha, that's great. Life imitates art.
He was taking inspiration from that, from the Bible.
I really enjoy Hemi Yang's artwork, and the choice of the use of like black in some scenes is very, very good. Really good comic book. I think it would make an interesting movie.
I think the narrative structure would be different for a movie, right? Because I think that there's a lot of exposition that's done with Wick explaining to everybody in the world who he is and where he came from and what the nature of the universe is and stuff. And maybe it would be done in like a flashback instead in a movie.
I thought some of the scene changes were a little too abrupt.
A lot of and it seemed like there were a lot of little short scenes that ended in cliffhangers, like, "Oh, Tristan's car is upside down and there's blood everywhere," or Wick, Wick is saying, "Oh, he's kind of like Pinhead, like, shall we begin?" And there's a lot of it, like, ends with implied violence against like a crowd of people or whatever.
You mentioned when Tristan is involved in a car crash. When they're crossing the dead, barren, desolate wasteland that used to be the Midwest, which is desert for miles, and it's cracked up, dried clay floor, and they're like, oh, I can't see anything, everything is the same, and they've been driving for hours. And then it gets dark, and the first thing that happens is they crash into a huge boulder in the middle of the plain. And what happens is that they're rescued because the car tips over. There's a pool of blood
and
next
that was
to
the
Tristan.
ending of an issue, right? I think.
Yeah, and then the next issue, Tristan is put in the back seat of the car of this woman that rescues him and Elspeth. Elspeth is talking to the lady. She's kind of apprehensive because the lady seems to be very religious, but she's not the loony kind of religious. Tristan wakes up and he goes like, oh, hey, this was the most relaxing sleep I've had in days. Dude, you've been in a car crash and you had a pool of blood around you, and now you wake up and
she
say this was the most...
She said he just hit his head and he's probably fine.
Yeah, but what about the pool of blood that we see at the end of the other issue?
Maybe it was a head wound because they bleed a lot. I don't know.
Still sounded a little strange to me, that he was in a car crash, probably with a concussion, is depicted with a pool of blood, and the car is like over him, and then he wakes up in the backseat of another person. And he says, "Well, that was the most relaxing sleep I've had in days," and I'm like, okay, but maybe he's being sarcastic, because up to that point his life has been nothing but misery, a lot. And it's kind of implied that Wick is trying to put obstacles onto their path. How is he influencing this? Because at one moment he says, "I've put every obstacle in front of the lovers, but still they persist."
Yeah.
When the Midwest is killed, very conveniently, what happens is that there's this line that defines the Midwest. It just so happens that the line stops just before the gas station where Tristan and Elspeth are at.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it seems like there's some divine intervention for them too. But that's not really explained much, and those other gods don't really show up right until people talk to them.
Yeah. Anyway, when he gets to San Francisco, he wants people to listen to him and to recognize him as their god. And he tells them, before you guys, bring me questions. I want you guys to ask me questions. And he's like, but first of all, I'm going to say right off the bat, there is no heaven. There's no meaning to this existence. And I don't stop world suffering because I couldn't care less. Kind of like a denial that he's like God the creator, because he says there's no meaning to this existence. If he was the creator, he would have to have some kind of meaning to this existence.
Yeah, that's at least something.
Well,
and there's that old philosophical question: if God is all good, God can't be all good and all powerful and all knowing, and there still is evil in the world. So the answer in this comic book is that he's not all good.
Right. And there's a lot of things that people in this comic book do in the name of God, or
that
what they
horrible.
think is God.
Yeah.
Yeah, like one of the first obstacles that Tristan and Elspeth have to deal with is when they're they're driving to find the library, and they come across this little hick town where you said they are
chicken and waffles
and I think this was in Arkansas at this point. This preacher. Oh, up to this point, of course, all the planes have crashed and all the communications in the world have been stopped. So people know that there's something wrong going on.
And there's just one cop in their town, and he's with them. So basically, there's no law except for whatever they feel like.
Yeah, and so what happens is that this pastor, Sam Calhoun, he says like, "Oh, welcome to our flock," and he's like.
Yeah, he comes and sits with him and starts talking to him, and Tristan's like, you know what, we've had a long drive, we're really tired, we just want to eat our chicken and waffles quietly, or whatever.
Yeah, and then he says, oh, I'm just talking to you about God, and it's like, listen, bub, I don't think...
God is who you think he is. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, what?
This guy just blasphemed in...
Yeah, he just denied God in front of me, and the owner of the restaurant was like,
no chicken and waffles for you.
No chicken and waffles for you. And they leave, and out of the darkness, someone clubs both of them, and they wake up, and they're in jail. And it was like this hick cop going like, ho, you guys are not going anywhere. As far as I'm concerned, you guys are worth not even the piss on your bodies or something like that. And then he drives them over to this place, and he says, I'm going to show you the work of God. The work of God for those people in that godforsaken place was that a plane crashed on top of a fraternity house. Yeah. And I'm like, if this is such a small town, do you guys have a campus around or something?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I went to college in a really small farm town at Washington State University over in eastern Washington.
Did you guys have fraternities that dealt in debauchery and sin?
Yeah.
So this freaking plane falls on a fraternity, and they consider that a miracle.
You can see all their corpses that had tried to crawl out of the doors and stuff down at the bottom of the house.
Yeah, it's terrible. And then the pastor is in front of it, and everybody else in that little town is around, but they're more like background decoration because none of them does anything. Pastor Calhoun is like, you guys are going to embrace, you guys are going to be saved and stuff. And of course, Tristan has to kind of says something insulting.
You guys are you guys are sicker than I thought.
The cop punches him in the face.
And then Elspeth shoots him in the neck, right? Like soon after that.
This would never happen. Tristan and Elspeth are completely unarmed, okay? At this point. They're probably woozy, they've been clubbed in the head and stuff and stuck in the back of a cop car. But still, they get into a fight with a police officer after he punches Tristan, and somehow Elspeth gets his gun. And she shoots him in the neck. Yeah.
No, I like that scene. I like
it, but I think it's unrealistic that someone could just not just unarmed people could actually fight against armed people.
Well, if he's underestimating them, I mean he's in this little hick town probably where he never really has to deal with that.
I absolutely could see that happening with a cop, but Elspeth is trying to get Tristan in the car. She's pointing the gun at everybody. You see the town people more like a shape in the background, so nobody's actually doing anything to surround them. But the pastor, who's standing in front of them, at one point gets down, raises the hem of his pants, takes out a gun. You guys aren't going anywhere, and he shoots the cop car that they're trying to leave in. He blasts one of the windows, and basically Tristan just runs over to him, pummels him to death. But he had a gun, so what happened to the gun, you know? I mean, when Tristan ran towards him, he should have shot Tristan. But the gun mysteriously disappears from the page.
Well, yeah, he's a preacher, too. I don't know, maybe
That's true.
He's not obviously no good with the gun.
Instead, he just runs over to Tristan, and Tristan also runs over to him, and he starts fighting him with his bare fists and beats him to death. And nobody does anything. All the other people in the town, and Elspeth is inside the car. Okay, so they just get in the car and leave. But I think that two unarmed people fighting against two armed people, I don't think that would have ended the way it did in real life.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it seems like they didn't really expect any resistance. I mean, if you're pointing a gun at somebody, you don't expect him to do anything. Yeah.
They were cowards. Yeah. Anyway, they cut to Wick, and he's asking people for questions. And have you counted how many questions he actually answers before he gets tired?
Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't really answer much questions. He just says to the person who says, "Do you lie?" He says, "Great question.
Yeah.
Like, you would be winning if this was a contest."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Well, do you?" And I get the answer is obvious. He just says, "Well, we've covered enough ground." And I'm like, "No, you haven't covered any ground at all." Although it's fair to say that they might have cut away time for some spring cleaning. And that's when he asks, which place would you like me to make disappear?
Yeah.
And that's when the guy says, the Midwest. And then he wants a pyramid. Someone asks, "How do you want us to make you a pyramid?"
Yeah.
That red-haired chick that you mentioned.
Yeah. So what was it that old lady said something irritating?
Something like, "Well, what do you want us to make you a pyramid with?" And then this huge block of stone smashes the lady. "Well, here it is. Now you guys can build me the monument." And I was like, "Well, you should make more stones rain if you want a pyramid."
Yeah. Well, they don't want to waste panels with that. So what I think is that he wants people to worship him. So he's like, okay, what is it going to take for you to acknowledge that I'm God? But he doesn't. Everybody doubts him all the time, and it just makes him madder and madder. He's all over the place.
But this is part of the story, because that's exactly the reason why Julian Demond gets mad at him, because he holds nothing important. And
well, the only thing that's important to him is himself, right? Or acknowledgement.
He's like the supreme, arrogant deity in the world. Very jealous, very destructive, very...
I thought it was really cool when he
demanding.
was ending the world and there were these colorful DNA strand-looking things floating all around him.
He was trying to destroy the world and creating it again.
I thought that was really neat, and the idea that we're all tied to God by DNA that he created, and it's these colorful spirals. Well, and when he says there's no heaven, where are these gods? And where do they come from, and where do they go when they leave again?
That's a good question, because they're kind of they come out of the machine of the story, I guess. When I was a little surprised that the answer was so easy.
Oh, you just say their names?
Yeah, you just say their names and they will appear. I guess this might be if you're an extremist.
And there was like a prophecy about those two people, right? So they're important enough. So maybe if they say their names or if they call out to them.
Was there a prophecy about these two people?
There was something in their religious texts about two lovers, and Wick says, "You're dangerous." Yeah,
you're talking about when they're actually looking at books in the Preston Library. Yeah, there's some interesting things there, like they discover randomly the names of those two gods in a footnote in a book that they pulled out of the shelves. But like you said, this is supposed to be almost like a prophesized thing. It would make sense that things would, happen that way because they're meant to. In fact, don't they actually say that we're here in this library because we're meant to be here?
Yeah, and it's a little bit vague too. I mean, purposely, I think.
That's true. But yeah, the ending is pretty much Elspeth and Tristan mention these two deities' names in the library just in the nick of time when Wick is, "I'm going to destroy the world. Take this time to be with your loved ones and stuff, but just leave me out of it." He decides that he wants to, I guess, create a new Genesis.
one thing that I was wondering at the end of the series is we've got Tristan and Elspeth and the lady at the church, and I cannot remember her name, and her little girl. Are they the only people left alive in the whole world?
I don't think so. Even when Wick is fighting with his two brothers after they appear, there's a point in time when he merges himself with the world and he shakes the world, and you see all this destruction, and then he comes back up out of the world and he says something like, "That was a few million people."
Yeah, right. It's like some kind of a threat, like if you fight me, you're going to kill this many people or something like that.
We see Wick flying away from the planet, and we see the sun. It actually flies around the sun. It's an interesting struggle because one of them is supposed to be the Holy Spirit, but he's very demon-like.
I thought it was the other way around. I thought the demon-like one was the Jesus, and the Holy Spirit was the gray guy.
I got the idea that it was, Jesus was the Silver Surfer dude.
Yeah, Silver Surfer and Hellboy.
And one of the things that they do hint, well, they don't hint, they actually say it out loud, is that the reason why those two deities removed themselves from the world was because of the crucifixion, when they crucified Jesus. And I'm like, so did they crucify that deity, Jesus, or did they crucify like an avatar of that deity or something like that? But at one point, Wick talks to the Jesus character and he says, "I know you were here, you tried to save them, and and then they get into this debate about being linked to the humans because they created the humans, and so they created them flawed." And it's like, of course we created them flawed because we created them. And I'm like,
oh, I think he said because they're flawed. They created them because they're flawed, and if the humans deserve to die, then we deserve much worse.
Yeah, basically. They fight.
Yeah,
they fight.
Fact,
they punch each other.
He creates a fist out of colors, right, and punches him with it.
Yeah, I expected something a little more elaborate than this. When they started fighting, I was like, oh, okay, so it's going to be this kind of fight.
It felt like Wick expected to win, and it was going to be a difficult fight, even though it was 2 against 1. But then it wasn't a difficult fight.
And when they punch him, he gets really happy. He says, "Oh, I've missed our talks."
And he had little bits of debris like stuck in his face and something like stabbed through his ear.
I just expected it to be a little more, because he's been so poetic so far, but at the same time so coarse in his dealings with the humankind. And then he also becomes really, really offensive when he's talking to his other brethren. He's talking to them like it's a family argument. It's like when Wick realizes that his two brothers have been released, his first words are "oh" and "shit." And when he's fighting with Jesus and the Holy Spirit, he says, "Hey, here's my reply. Fuck you."
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess he's been hanging around Earth for a while, and they haven't. But they hardly talked at all. The other two gods.
The red one, especially the Jesus character, actually does speak a bit. So I guess he's telling his two brethren that they can choose to save the people in that city, or and then he just escapes while I guess the other two deities are trying to fix things. And he turns himself into an asteroid, and he basically says he starts going around the Earth and the sun like a comet, picking up speed, and then he's like, "I'm the asteroid. You guys are the dinosaurs."
Yeah. So then they fly up there and
basically they just grab him and smash him on the ground.
Pull him apart.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really liked the ending, and I was scared that the gods were gonna fix everything and make the world back the way it was. And then maybe only Tristan and Elspeth would remember all the problems that they had with. Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't do it. I mean, it props to them for that. That was really escape the trope.
Yeah.
Of having the Deus Ex Machina come in and fix everything.
The brave way to end it was to say, the world, all this crap really did happen to the world, and now this is the way it is. It's changed forever. Yeah,
the Midwest is screwed.
Yeah. But there's a gigantic orgy in Paris.
Oh yeah, that was great. I was like, is this whole thing going to take place in the United States, or are they really not going to show anywhere else? But they do. They do show Rome, they show the Colosseum, and then they show Paris. And when they get to Paris, like everybody's having a huge orgy
about
underneath
Julian
the Eiffel
showing
Tower.
him around. It's like, well, Julian had to drive, right? It's like, well, if you take away this limitation of driving in our car, there's all kinds of cool places we could go. We don't have to just go to places in California.
Yeah. And I have to say, the orgy in Paris was completely spontaneous, uninspired by Wick. He just found it there. He was like, oh, wow, okay, well, people are enjoying their last moments in the world, I guess, so I'm going to join in. And he does, until he gets tired. Even he says, I'm done.
Yeah, and it looked like Julian wanted to join in, and then by the time he was ready to join in, then Wick was like, okay, I'm done. He's like, oh.
It's like, hey, I just took a Viagra. It's going to kick in like half an hour. No, that part is not there. I'm just making fun. Wick, a very strange, very chaotic god. The other two are pretty much... I could see the other two as actually being the creators of the universe and not Wick. Wick was like this cosmic gesture, kind of this cosmic joker.
Well, he's also kind of like Nyx, because all these people worship him, and he turns around and stabs them in the back.
Oh yeah, that's a good moment that you mentioned, Nyx, because there's this part where I actually wanted to bring to your attention, which is this little panel. It's on issue number 3, after Wick kills all the dinner guests, and he turns to Julian and asks him, "Did you imagine the two of us hiding in your room, forever locked in a loving embrace?"
Oh, yeah.
It's like Mamoulian talking to Joseph Whitehead, or Nyx talking to Swan.
Yeah, we were going to keep each other company in the dark.
The super powerful being and the old wise man who got his hands dirty a little bit.
Yeah.
He's rich. I'm sure if either of us found God or a god, if that would be possible, we would probably be okay with him kissing us in the mouth. God doesn't have herpes, I guess. He's very seductive. He's very... Wick is also very seductive, very alluring, very attractive, because he's very beautiful, and he's got all these colors on him.
All those people at the dinner party they just thought he was an actor.
They were like, oh, you wanted to make a movie? You want to get into fiction and movies? You didn't have...
they're like, by the way, I'll help you make your movie, but get rid of this guy. Yeah.
They do call him an asshole. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the comic book. They do say that, and Tristan says something like, God is a prick.
And they call him a sociopath. They call him a sociopath a lot.
In one of those moments where Tristan should have kept his mouth shut, he also screams out, God's a prick. It's like, it's not a smart move when someone's like pointing a gun at you. There's a play here. There's a play on words, and there's a play on the destiny of these characters. Like they're trying to make their way to Providence. So it's like Providence is also watching out for them. At the same time, the Wick is trying to put obstacles in their path. It's almost like you said, there's like this prophecy of the lovers, and they reach the library because that is the place they're meant to be in, because they're the ones who are going to save everything. So maybe they escape so easily because that's Providence.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I don't know. Actually, do you want to skip to the end? That was my favorite part. The way that the way that his two brothers, they sort of tore him apart into colors, right? And then we find out at the end that the world is still devastated, and there are these winds, these color winds that float through. And that seems so Clive Barker. It reminded me of the end of Imagica, where there were these rifts between the dominions that were going to stay forever.
Interesting. I took it in a different way. I just saw the colors like surrounding Tristan and Elspeth being pregnant.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought it was wind. I thought because they talked about the winds. So let's see. I was talking to Mark about this in email a little bit. Because I asked him if Tristan and Elspeth were based on him and Stephanie, and he said, in parts, yes. And I said, I really liked the ending too with the color wind, and he said, thank you. Endings are tough. I feel like we got this one right. I thought that they had basically spread his color out all over the world, so that, and he did say, somebody's going to come along and put me back together. So I figured the wind was just, every once in a while some parts of Wick blow through.
And the epilogue that opens up with this illuminated banner that says, "The world is different now," in very illustrated letters. Yeah. I actually can see that is what happens. Yeah.
So I like that. And reading this series of books, I was dreading and hoping at the same time that these two gods would come back and fix the world. I was hoping because you don't want the world to be wrecked, but I was dreading it because that would be stupid. You know what I mean? I mean, that would be really corny if they just okay, let's put everything back the way it was and resurrect all the people that Wick killed, and okay, you're good.
I did get that anxiety about it as well. I was like, after issue 1 and 2, I was like, okay, I can see where this is going. And I think I told you at one point, I imagine that his two brothers are going to show up and they're going to, put him back in his place. Because after issue 1, you see, he's going to kill a bunch of people. And issue number kills even more people. And you're like, well, I guess this god is not going to be around for much longer. Otherwise, the world's going to come to an end.
And I think it would be tempting making this comic to make, because these gods are pretty much omnipotent. He could have said, okay, they fixed everything. Now the world's back the way it was again. Or, turn back time, or all kinds of crazy stuff.
And I was dreading, please make them not fix everything. And they didn't.
They didn't. The world is completely different now.
Bandwidth for this episode was provided by Pyramid Gallery. Thanks again, Pyramid Gallery. We love your puzzle boxes.
You can reach us on the web at www.clivebarkercast.com. Leave us a review on iTunes. We're on Podomatic, Xbox Music Store, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, Doubletwist, Blackberry, and Pocketcast. Like our page on Facebook and join the Occupy Midian group. On Twitter, we're at BarkerCast and at Occupy Midian. The forum is www.clivebarkerfans.com/forum. Opening theme by Colin Lakativa.